using
Well,
AI.
what do you think about the landlords wanting all that information?
It's too much. But
I
the thing
think
is
so
this,
too.
some people feel like they have no choice, right? If they need an
Yeah.
apartment and all the landlords are asking for all the stuff, what are they going to do?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That landlords
Yeah.
are asking for access to their bank account. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like, that's ridiculous.
Now, I'm not saying all landlords are doing this or most doing this. This is someone who told me about this experience they had in a different state. It wasn't even New York, but it is something that I heard. And my experience in New York is that they're increasingly asking for more information. I was kind of surprised a few years ago when I was trying to get an apartment what they wanted, right?
You
Tax.
mentioned,
We have a friend of ours in Australia who commented saying tax returns, oh hell no. By now, that's standard here. Almost every time you ask for an apartment, they're going to want your tax returns.
Yeah.
get out of here. Tax
Yeah.
returns?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Mhm.
par for the course, right? That's they're all asking
Yeah.
and for the past few years
W-2s.
also,
Yeah.
not just the past year usually. Like they want your yeah,
That's ridiculous.
it is,
Yeah.
but it's what they're
And
asking for. They
yeah.
want tax returns, they want pay stubs, which is a problem if you're
Yeah.
self-employed. I have that issue.
Yeah.
I don't have pay stubs. I'm not an employee. I can show you invoices, but even those I have to redact because I have attorney-client confidences to maintain. So I can't really be showing you all my
Mm.
information that's on there and what I'm doing with them. But I could show you the basic of here's an invoice, redact most of the informational and sensitive data, but then put just maybe the amount that I'm getting so you can see that I have some money coming in. That's kind of the closest I can provide to a pay stub because I'm not on someone's salary
Oh,
payroll.
yeah.
That's
So
ridiculous.
they wouldn't take that though. They wouldn't. The landlords I experienced wouldn't take that. They said, no, we want a pay stub. And I'm like, well, I have it. I'm self-employed. So you're saying you just won't rent to someone who's self-employed? It's kind of crazy.
Mhm.
That's ridiculous. That's completely insane.
And I heard lines like, well, even if you have money in the bank, you can show me. How do I know you're not going to blow it on crypto? We'd much rather have someone who has a steady paycheck. And I'm thinking, really, that seems kind of backwards. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, which many people are,
Right.
easily lose your job and not be able to pay. But if someone could show you that they work for themselves and they have a substantial amount of savings in the bank, that's worse. You wouldn't want someone with a lot of money. You want someone with no money who's paycheck to paycheck. People
Right.
lose their jobs probably
Mhm.
more readily than they can blow all their money. Of course, you can if you're really irresponsible. You can blow it all in a second on crypto or whatever. But that's what you're banking on. You'd rather bet on the person's paycheck to paycheck than the person who has a business with a lot of money. It's kind of weird.
And
Yeah.
there was a survey that was done that showed that there was 66%, over 66% of Americans were living paycheck to paycheck.
Right, right. Okay. And so these landlords, in my experience, favor that 66%, but there's still 34% that's not, right?
Right.
Are they
Mhm.
left out? Are they forced to have to buy a home? Because that comes with its own set of challenges. Everyone can buy a home at all times, So what do they do?
Yeah.
Right. And then it's
That's
the idea of do you want to provide all that information? They definitely
yeah.
want bank records, right? That's icky to me.
No, what do you not
Yeah.
even bank
Right.
records?
Oh,
You
yeah.
That's
have to bank records.
insanity.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If you tell them no,
Mhm.
then I can give you the apartment, right? So if you say I'm not providing my bank records, I'm not providing my tax returns, I think they usually want a letter of recommendation from your employer, from other people.
That's
Um,
that's insanity.
Mhm.
yeah, they definitely want reference letters from people, and some will even ask. I think most now are asking from a letter, for a letter from your previous or your current landlord as well.
That's
Mhm.
insane.
So yeah, they want
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so if you say no, if you say this is crazy, listen, I'll write you a check right now for the year, and we leave. No, they'll usually say no. In my experience, they don't want that. I don't know why. They'd rather
Yeah.
you provide all of that information and be financially worse off than have the money to just pay up front. I don't know why this is, but this is my experience. And I would get things like, well, if we make an exception for you, we're going to get sued for discrimination. I heard that from realtors and landlords. In today's day and age, people want to sue. They're sue happy. They're going to say that we're discriminating against people. So if we ask people for this information, if we make an exception for you, we don't take all your stuff, but we demanded it of them, then we'll get sued for discrimination. You know, I heard that. Again,
So
I
how are
also
they gonna know?
Well,
blow your money
isn't
on
that
crypto.
discriminatory that they wouldn't take your statements because they want a pay stub and
Right,
you're self-employed?
Well,
Like that's
they're
discriminatory.
discriminating
yeah.
against self-employed lawyers, yes.
Yeah.
What they're saying is they're going to get sued for racial discrimination or something like that.
But
It's
how is the person, how am I gonna know what they get from you?
Say it again.
How am I going to know if they, how can I sue them if I don't know what records or what documents you give them? Who's gonna sue them? Who's gonna sue them?
he might tell other people, oh yeah, I didn't need to provide it. I did this. And then they'll say, hey, wait a minute, they forced me to do it.
Right,
What? That's discrimination.
right.
Right, but you're self-employed, so that's a totally different
Yeah, and that's
category
what
that
I
you're
was telling him. I
saying.
said, listen, I'm an attorney. This isn't
Yeah,
discrimination. I'm providing the records I'm able to
right.
provide. Yes, Jay, you're right. Technically, they're discriminating against me, although being a self-employed lawyer isn't a protected class where I'm going to file a lawsuit over, but it's not kind. It's certainly not right to do it to somebody.
Well, what started all of this? That they wanted all this information? It sounds like they're running a business as opposed to
Well,
right.
there's a
It sounds like business
concern.
driven.
There's a concern that landlords are getting screwed over, right? That tenants have all the rights and landlords have none. You hear this over and over and over again.
Mhm,
Now, it is
mhm.
true that, especially during the pandemic, but generally speaking, even, it can be difficult to evict a tenant, right? It certainly can take time. So you do hear stories of
Mhm.
landlords getting stuck with a tenant who's not paying or who's destroying the property.
Right.
It's just a nightmare, you know, and it takes years to get them out. In the meantime, they're getting screwed over in all these different ways. So that does happen, right? But that doesn't mean that you should require all this intrusive information on everyone, especially when you have someone
Right.
who can say, listen, I have my own business. I can just give you
Mhm.
money for this apartment. What are we even doing right now? Right? It's like, no,
Right.
I have an act of Congress from you. It's, you know, it's crazy. Some of this almost feels like, I hate to say it, but a form of domination or control, like it's a power trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's part of it too. But
Mhm.
I understand the part about, landlords worried about being screwed over.
Right.
Um, I mean, there were some things we did talk about before, like even the squatters thing, right? I guess it's in New York where people can just come in and be in your place and you have no contract with them, but since they were there, they're allowed to stay there and you have no real recourse but go to court. Um,
Yeah, that's the thing. You
so-
have to go to court for all of these issues. Self-help is illegal. And that's, I think, why a lot of landlords get frustrated, you know, because they look at it like this is my property. I own this house or this building,
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, and someone is violating me right there, not paying the rent, or like you said, they're squatting, or they're
right,
breaking the law, or breaking our agreement, or whatever it is, right? They feel like they're being violated in some way. I think a lot of people in that situation want to go in and take matters into their own hands, change the locks on people, physically
right,
remove them, right? Do what they can. They're like, what do you mean? Why can't I? I own this place and you're violating my rights. So there's that
right,
frustration there, right? The law
Right.
says, no, you can't resort to self help. You got to go do it through the courts. And that can be frustrating. Number one, hiring lawyers is expensive. And we know how
right.
long it can take, right? With the backlog of cases that you see, right?
Yeah,
And you do sometimes
Mhm.
have judges who are sympathetic to tenants or people who are in the apartments, and they'll give them a little bit more leeway than the landlords would like.
right.
Mhm.
And at the same time, let's also acknowledge that um I would assume the reason why it's gotten to this point as far as those types of rights is because there were in the past, and I'm sure now landlords who would abuse their
Mhm.
authority and
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
ownership
Mhm.
by either trying to put people out immediately with no kind of notice for whatever whims that they wanted to come up with for raising rents uncontrollably for no reasons.
Mhm.
So
Right.
there
Or
had to
they'll
be
do
things put in
Yeah,
place to
providing,
protect.
yeah,
right, because here's the
providing the
thing.
basic necessary necessities,
Right.
Yeah,
heat,
Exactly
hot
right. So
water.
and that's the
Yeah.
thing. There's a I guess a tension from a legal perspective here between contract law and property rights, or human rights in this case, right? So on the one hand, you do have a contract if in the landlord tenant scenario, and the tenant and the landlord might feel like, well, if the tenant is violating the terms of that contract, then I should be able to kick them out and move on, get someone else in there or whatever. But on the other hand, you have to be sensitive to the idea that even though it's a contractual relationship and someone, yes, is paying for the privilege of living somewhere, it still is their home, right? Even though they're a tenant, they don't own it, it becomes their home. And so
Right.
you got to be careful when it comes to infringing on their ability to live. I mean, you don't want a landlord to just throw someone out, make them homeless in a day's notice, right? You
Right.
want to give them time to get their stuff together, save up money, do what they got to do. You know, you don't want
Right.
landlords shutting off hot water and electricity and subjecting people to really terrible, inhumane conditions. So,
And it used to happen more often.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now
So I think, yeah.
here's a scenario, and just picture this. What would you do in this situation? Let's say your landlord wants you out for whatever reason, right? They want to move in their cousin, you know, whatever. They want you out of the apartment they've been renting to. They say, we're giving you 30 days notice. You know, maybe you're on a month to month now, whatever the case is, but they're saying you got to move out within the next month. Well, what if you don't have savings? What if you don't have any money saved up? And to get another apartment, we know how not only burdensome but expensive that can be. First month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, living expense, you know, all these different things. So you need several $1,000s at least saved up to do that. But if you're paycheck to paycheck, like you said, Jay, 66% of people are paycheck to paycheck. You don't have that kind of savings, and you still have to pay rent in the interim. I mean, what do you do? You know, what are you supposed to do in that case to avoid being homeless?
Right. And isn't I don't know the details, but wasn't there a case recently where the courts made it kind of illegal to be homeless? Some
Illegal to
they
be
did. The
homeless?
Supreme Court.
Yeah, I've been seeing that news pop around lately.
They have.
Are they saying
It's
that
like
they have
it
to
puts you in a bad situation.
check into a shelter and not be on the streets? Is that what they're saying?
But yeah, and you have to go to a shelter. You can't be homeless regardless if there is no shelter space or not. You know, if there's no shelter space, it's still illegal to be.
Yeah, the Supreme Court said that cities can punish people for sleeping in public spaces.
Right.
Not
Cities
going
can ban people. People can ban people from sleeping in public places. So
right. But even if they're in the shelter, they're homeless. So you have to be careful with that. It's not making being homeless illegal. It's making it so that you can't sleep on the streets indefinitely.
Yeah, but punish people. That's quite ridiculous.
Because it's, you know,
But yeah, to your point, it's a what do you do in that? There's just nothing you can do. You know, I mean, theoretically, I guess you would get your security deposit back, and hopefully that can help you for the next place. But who knows what the price that security deposit might have been from years ago, and it's not going to be sufficient to cover what the new security deposits are.
Right. If you even get it back, yeah, and then you still need your first month, last month's rent. Sometimes there are fees just to apply to an apartment now. I mean, there's a lot that they're asking you for.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And not only that, like you're saying, with the returning the security deposit, it depends on how the apartment was left.
Sure.
You know, it's a lot that plays
exactly.
into it.
And sometimes because the landlord possesses it, they'll refuse to give it back to you. And then what do you do? You can take them to court if you want to go do that, but that often requires, again, hiring a lawyer, going through the legal process. Most of the time, you're not going to get it back. If they say no, what do you know, realistically, if you're the 66%, especially who live in paycheck to paycheck, doesn't have that kind of disposable income or time on their hands, you're going to lose that money.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's crazy. It's crazy. So.
No, it is, you know, something to be said. And I'm aware of the struggles on both sides too, right? You know, I'm not trying to say there should be no landlords, screw them all. You know, no, I think we just have to be sensitive to everyone's needs and, you know, try not to overly burden anybody.
Right.
But it's really difficult. I mean, what do you do? And somebody was saying, well, tenants have so many rights now, it's really hard for them to deny you an apartment. But there are so many people, this was my experience anyway, so many people are going for these apartments that, of course, I can scream up and down, oh, legally, I don't have to provide this. Or they ask for another than credit reports. Even though they're not supposed to discriminate on the basis of bad credit, they still ask for the credit report. So sure, I can pick a fight on that and all these things. I'm going to give you all my information redacted, not give you any real information. And I can stomp my feet all I want. But what are they going to do? They're going to come back and say, thank you for applying. We decided to give the apartment to a different applicant. That's what they're going to say. And then what are you going to do about that? Right. And they're not going to tell you specifically because we think you have bad credit or whatever. They're not gonna, they're not gonna do that. They're just gonna say, we chose this
Mhm.
person. And then in their mind, maybe it's, well, you show that you were difficult because we asked you for stuff. You wouldn't cooperate with us. So what kind of tenant are you gonna be if you won't even give us simple paperwork that we're asking for? We don't trust you. We don't like you now. We don't think that you're a good tenant. So
Right.
that's what's gonna end up happening, right? And you do see
Yeah.
people getting around the law, discriminating, doing all kinds of things they shouldn't do in the name of, oops, we gave it to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, it's something has to change on that front.
It does.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we gotta draw the line somewhere. And someone was telling me it's illegal to ask for bank access. Well, if it is, show me, because everything that I saw suggested otherwise, that they can ask for it. You can say no, and then they can refuse the apartment.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if it would be illegal to ask, maybe illegal to
Right.
mandate, but even then you have to,
Right.
I guess, show. I don't know where it says that it's
it
illegal
would
to
need
ask.
to be made specifically illegal, because don't forget, at the end of the day, this is a contractual relationship that you're entering into, right? So unless there are specific prohibitions on contractual terms here, the parties are free to
Right.
enter into whatever agreement they see fit, right? So sure, you can say, I'm not giving that, and the landlord can say, well, I'm not renting you the apartment, unless there's a law
Right.
that says they can't ask for this.
Yeah.
Right. It kind of it kind of reminds me a little bit, not exactly the same, but as far as asking for information that they probably shouldn't be privy to, is when it used to be standard practice for companies, and a variety of places to ask for your social security number, and they would use that as your customer number in their records, when realistically, legally, they're not
Uh-huh.
they can't require you to give that. Only places that can do that are certain places involving banking or finances and this sort of thing. But it was since everyone already had a number, a lot of places just used your social security number as your record file until there was like a concerted effort to educate people and be like, this, first of all, this is dangerous. This,
Uh-huh.
there's the potential for fraud here. And so it's I think it was there was law that basically said that you can't require it. If someone refuses, they'd have to assign you
Uh-huh.
another number.
Right.
And so it seemed to kind of slowly phase out of use in that regard, people asking for those.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because once you move, what happens to that information?
Yeah.
What happens to it?
Right.
Once you move, what happens to that information?
Right. And I
Yeah.
did see laws that talked about landlords having to keep that information private and secure, and that kind of thing. But it's still a risk, right? That you're subjecting
Big
it.
risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll want to perform their own credit checks on you too.
Right. Like the credit check, I get it, but yeah, requiring access to my bank account,
But
like what?
does it
And how
need
do
to
you
be
Right.
even do
Right.
that? How do you even give them access to your bank account? Like,
right? And to be
Uh-huh.
the level of access. So someone from, I guess, the banking world commented that you would have to make them a co-signer on the account if you were going to give them permission to withdraw money. So I don't know if they were asking for that, right? But it seemed like that's what they were going for. Basically, they want to be able to check your activity to see how you were spending your money, and if necessary, withdraw the rent money automatically if you refuse to pay it.
yeah, no, they can
Yeah.
choke
That's
on
that's too much.
they
So
can
yeah,
choke on the
it
meat.
is.
Yeah.
It is crazy. Now, I did see something suggesting that it was illegal for the landlord to ask you for this kind of information once you're already in the apartment. They can't evict you for not giving it. But
Mm,
it's a different scenario if you're not in yet and they're asking for information on your
Mhm.
application for them to decide whether to give you the apartment. So I just don't
right.
get why they should need that, really. If
Yeah.
you can provide what they're asking for now, then you should be able to go forward from there. I get it. They're afraid maybe you'll have those 3 months rent now, but maybe next month or in a few months you'll stop paying or something. But if you're going to be able to look at my bank account, I mean, what are they really going to do? Let's say the person didn't have the money in their account.
Uh-huh.
The landlord can't take out money that's not there. So what do? They're going to try to evict you probably, but they would do that anyway if you weren't paying. It's like, why do they really need to see
Right.
your account, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's just for the scenario of maybe number one, keeping an eye on you over the years to make sure that you're being good with your money, like you're responsible with your money, so they can try to evict you ahead of time if they see that you're no
Yeah,
longer
right.
responsible. Or maybe in the event of you having the money but not giving it to them, and they want to be able to go in there and take it. But
Yeah.
it's like, come on, there needs to be some kind of trust, I think, or these relationships are never going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That applies to interpersonal relationships, but also professional ones, right? Landlord, tenant, employer,
Uh-huh.
employee. You have to have some basic level of trust, or what do you
Right.